Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Hey, we're coming here with another great podcast. Thanks to my wonderful audience for tuning in. We certainly appreciate you guys. You guys are always wonderful. And be sure to give us a like, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that bell notification button so you get all the notifications for the Chris Voss shows. Go to patreon.com/Chris Voss, and be sure to also subscribe to the channel. You can see us on iTunes, Google Play, and the TuneIn app. I've got a really great guest all the way from Australia. So this call costs extra. It's Goran. Goran, how you doing there, buddy?
How you going?
Good, good, good. And I'm just going to let you pronounce your last name for us.
Zivanovic.
Zivanovic.
Yeah, or Westernized, maybe Zivanovic. Whichever one you prefer is fine.
And where can people find you on the internet so they can kind of look you up and Google you as we talk about you?
Yeah, there's a couple of places. I've got acupunctureofthemind.com, which is a book I wrote, which I just published recently. And I've also got our business site, which is www.gothiczenstudios.com.au, which is a filming site.
Cool. So we want to talk about you and get to know you better, and some of the topics that you want to talk about today. So let's get into it. Tell us about you and your journey and some experiences you had.
Okay. So basically, I wrote a book many years ago, and I had it published, but I wasn't happy with it at all. So that was the beginning of my literary journey. Now that book is based on experiences and all that sort of stuff, but it didn't really get into the nitty-gritty of things. I actually had a lightning strike. I was struck by lightning. I had a near-death experience. So that led me to my latest book, which I was more honest about. When someone says you've been struck by lightning, they've been struck by lightning, and then they have the NDE.
Brings a whole new bag of irony, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I don't kind of make it public, but lately my wife's encouraged me to do this. So this is how I became on your show, and I appreciate you talking to me, Chris.
I appreciate you coming on. So you got struck by lightning. What you want to tell us the story of how you pulled that one off?
It's even a little bit more unusual than that, because I was struck by lightning, but I was actually inside the house at the time.
Holy crap.
Yeah, so I had my ex-wife and I had separated, and I moved in with a flatmate. And it was a really interesting scenario, because my flatmate, who was an old friend of mine, had broken his arm, and he had all this metal and all these things in his arm. And he was waiting for an operation. So we were playing Scrabble throughout the afternoon, as we do. And there was a storm that came in, and he was outside in the storm, and I was like the mother hen saying, "What are you doing? You come inside, like you're crazy, like it's got all this metal." And anyway, and he was fine. He came back inside. The storm went away, but then later that night there was another storm, which was really ferocious. And we're playing Scrabble again. And I went over to the bar fridge, and I was actually leaning on the bar fridge figuring out what I'm going to have. And that's when it hit. It came through the kitchen window. It got me, and that was the beginning of it.
Wow.
It was really quite surreal, because I remember like a metallic clicking sound in my ear. Everything went white and blue, and I can hear him screaming, like swearing actually, like, because he was on a big dining table over the other end with all the Scrabble pieces. And then, like, I know this is going to sound a bit weird, but in my head, I said, "Oh, so this is how it ends for me." Like, it was just like acceptance.
Wow.
And like all this was going on. But then everything went black.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to see all these little bright lights.
Uh-huh.
And like, I can only explain it like if you're traveling through space and you see lights.
Uh-huh.
And I was kind of like, yeah. So I was kind of like floating, but I can feel a presence with me. It was really weird.
Uh-huh.
And I was gravitating to a light, like there was lots of them, and I was gravitating to one, but then I started to think about my life. And I have a daughter who was beginning to get caught up in my ex-wife's cult.
Oh.
Yeah, and so at the time, you can imagine I was actually quite messed up, like I was depressed and all the rest of it. So, and then I started to think about her,
Mm-hmm.
and then I felt this presence like really close, and there was a conversation that was happening with this. I don't know what you want to call it, whether it's my own internal, imagination, or whether it's someone else or whatever it is. And then it came to the point, and I literally heard a voice saying, "Goran, you are going to be fine." And that's when I came back into that space that I was, and I dropped I describe it like a balloon full of water. You know how like the gravity just gets you, and you just like, I stumbled to the ground. And then my roommate came over screaming, and he's looking at my fingers and seeing what's blown off or whatever. And he was in a real panic, and I couldn't get up. I couldn't stand up.
Uh-huh.
I ended up crawling to the hallway, and I sat there, and all my hairs were just out everywhere. And, but I couldn't stand. Like I was just, I don't know. It was like gravity was too much for me or something. It was just that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then he rushed over to call the hospital, the ambulance, whatever it was, and I was saying, "No, leave it. I'm all right. I'm all right." Because I heard those words. Yeah, I heard those words that I was kind of like, "Goran, you're going to be fine." The other thing I should mention is I don't know if this was. This bit's a little bit. I'm not sure of. I don't know if I heard the words constantly or whether I felt if it's such a thing that you can feel words. Mm-hmm. But the word protection was always with me when I was in that black space. I just felt protection, like it was just there the whole time. So maybe that's why And they said, "No."
Did it seem to go on for like a really long time?
I didn't have a concept of time. Like obviously it was a split second, but
wow.
I was just accepting, and I was like, one of the other things too, I remember going towards this one particular light or whatever it was, an energy ball or whatever you call them, I don't even know. But then I don't know why my thought process thought it, but I thought if I go too close to that, I would be like incarnated or reincarnated into something else, and I'd start all over, but I didn't know what that was. And I knew that if I went there, I could not go back, maybe ever. I'm not sure. So it's almost like that there are other life forms, and maybe I was going to be one of these. And that kind of...
One door opens to you being a mouse, and another one a rabbit.
Or actually, more specifically, I was actually thinking of an alien, like another alien extraterrestrial kind of thing, not actually Earth, because I felt like Earth was so far beyond me. And maybe it was my mindset too, because obviously I was suffering like emotionally at the time, and I was, so at the end of that, they said, "Oh, he could have internal injuries, blah, blah, blah." And I just, in the end, no one came over, no one, I didn't go to the hospital until 2 weeks later when I could not walk. My calf muscles had swollen up. My feet were like red raw, and it was like, I explained it like having the most severe sunburn you ever have, and then you got crushed glass and someone's rubbing glass onto your feet.
God.
So if I had a sheet, like when I'm on my bed and I had a bit of a sheet on me, it was just excruciating. So I ended up going to the local GP, embarrassed, because I had to tell him that, like a couple of weeks ago I was struck by lightning. But he seemed to accept it all right. They gave me an x-ray of my calf muscles, and they found it wasn't a blockage, but something had like ballooned. They described the balloon in my calf muscle. So, and just prescribed painkillers and all that sort of stuff. It went away after a while. The only other thing was all the circuitry in the house. The lights were fine, but all the other circuitry had blown.
Oh, wow.
So I blew up the TV and all that, but I don't know
So
if it's
your
sort of,
TV, your fridge and stuff?
yeah, all the stuff that you plug in, but the lights for some reason they were still on. I don't know. But, yeah. So,
I'm sorry to laugh, but it's
oh no, it's all good and it's expected.
and it just was it maybe because you were holding a metal fridge, or did you just come through the window and
Well, the doctor said that because I was leaning with my right hand, somehow that might have helped. I don't know how the circuitry, because it hit from behind and it went through the fridge.
wow.
Yeah. So
That's a pretty amazing story, man. You're the first person I've ever met, I think, who's lived through a lightning, who's been struck by lightning, and that's not just a saying.
yeah,
So
it's
how did that change your life or affect your life?
well, interestingly, it kind of didn't for a while. What it did, the thing that it did do though, is ever since I was a child, for whatever reason, I had been, I don't know if you can talk about religion on your show or not.
Sure, yeah.
But
Go ahead.
yeah, I had never understood it, and I never gravitated to it. But in having said that, I was always talking to something or like and I just thought it was normal behavior. As I grew up, I had, I've experienced like what you call ghosts or whatever. I go to a hotel and, I have this young girl appear to me and I have no idea of what the history is. And then, I talk to someone there and they're like, oh, that's such and such. Like people see it all the time. And so I have a lot of those kind of experiences before the lightning strike. The thing that changed after the lightning strike is that I've had sleep paralysis, a lot of that, but I've also had a better word for it, like talking to other beings, like extraterrestrial kind of beings. And yeah, and that's why this book was important to me, because I decided to put those experiences in there. And
so do you see other beings or you just hear them?
No, when I'm sleeping,
okay,
I go there or they come to me or whatever. I actually talk to other beings. But since I've the last time that's probably happened is like 2 years ago, but I've had sleep paralysis since then. But then I also developed, I guess what some people call automatic writing. Like I look at it later, I'm like, wow, it's so foreign to me. Like I didn't write it. So I
have that when I drink and I write.
When you drink, did you say?
Yeah, I have the Hemingway problem when I drink. I write extremely wonderful stuff, and then I wake up the next morning and go, "Who the hell wrote that?"
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if it relates to what you drink, because I drink scotch, and that seems to help sometimes.
I'm not sure. It seems to be any sort of booze works for me. I can't have the same talent on pot, but Hemingway used to always say, "Write drunk and edit sober," or at least he's credited for that in many circles. But so how did that So what was the overall effect of it, other than just having those experiences? Did it change your outlook on life? Did it?
Yeah, what it did was it confirmed a lot of things that I'd already known, and then I think my blockage. Sorry.
It confirmed a lot of things you already knew about in regards to.
Yeah. In regards to my own fears, I guess, or people's fears. So I'm very much, I analyze the way that people do things or why they react to certain things in certain ways. And what's interesting is that, my ex-wife joined a cult when my daughter was born. And then I was like hit with it again. And then I had to go, well, maybe it's me. Maybe it's because I don't believe in religion that this is happening or whatever. So when I had the near-death experience, what that allowed me to do was to be honest with myself and just go back to my own true beliefs
Uh-huh.
And I think that children, like when you're younger, you know so much more than when you're
Yeah.
older, because obviously, as you know, you get polluted with all this other garbage. And yeah, so it's just about, not worrying about what other people think,
Mhm.
just live your own life, because it ends. And then whatever it might be at the end, that's what it is. Like,
So would you say you're more comfortable with dying when the time comes than you were before maybe the accident?
yeah, the process itself, like, I mean, obviously if you're in a lot of pain, then, that can't be good. But with me, the interesting thing is when I got struck by lightning, I felt no pain. Like it uh, I just, it was just like so quick that I didn't have that pain threshold. The pain came later,
Hmm.
but not instantly, like in that moment.
Hmm.
It's like I was just taken away so quickly.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
just amazing. I've always wondered about people that get struck by lightning. I think there's some people that have been struck by lightning more than once, and
Yeah, it's
what
incredible.
the
It's
hell they're doing.
inside, yeah, and inside the house too, or
Yeah, I
inside.
mean that's just crazy, man. I'm not going near any windows next time there's a rainstorm. Screw
Oh,
that
look,
stuff.
I've
I'm
got
gonna
much more respect for it now.
I'm gonna wrap myself in tinfoil next time there's a lightning storm around the house, man. I don't want to. I don't know. I've always been the sort of person where every now and then I'll say stuff, or I'll say stuff about God or religion, and all my friends will be like, "He's gonna get struck by lightning. I'm
Oh, all right.
gonna step away from you because you're gonna get zapped any minute." But
Yeah.
and of course, with my life, if I did get struck by lightning, people would be like, "Yeah, he's had that coming for years. We've been
Oh,
waiting for that to happen."
really? Wow. You should
So
hang
that's
around with
interesting.
people.
So then you wrote a book about this whole experience and talked
Uh,
about that.
the book isn't. The book is fictional. Like
Mhm.
the characters are fictional, the settings are fictional. But what I have done is incorporated actual experiences within the book.
Mhm.
This book I've been writing for 11 years, by the way. So
Mhm.
the reason it took so long was, well, it's a long story. I won't go in there. But one of the things is I've actually researched. So I befriended homeless people, for example, and I got
Mhm.
a different perspective. I actually interviewed like priests and called up universities to talk to Catholic, I don't know what they call them, like the head Catholic people in the universities about aliens, and what their view is on that sort of stuff. So a little bit of that is in the book. There's actually a lot more that didn't go in the book.
Mhm.
Um, so the book is essentially about a person who was once a priest,
Mhm.
and then a homeless person he met who he's trying to convert had actually implanted something in his brain and gone. He started to question his own beliefs because of a homeless person of all people. And then what he did was, in order to find some sort of resolution or whatever it is, he became a psychiatrist,
Mhm.
and that's when things changed, because he actually became a little bit more, became more crazy.
Mhm.
But he also found absolution in the
Mhm.
end. So that's essentially what it's about. It's like, who's crazy? Is it them? Is it us? Is it, and what's the whole meaning of everything when you put it together?
Is the book
Um,
available on Amazon or your books you've done?
yeah, it's available on amzn.com as a paperback and an ebook. It's
Uh-huh.
available at .com.au just as an ebook. And it should be available through bookstores. I should be getting the other paperback copy today so I can prove it.
Mhm.
So it should be available pretty much on any site that you can find,
What's the name of
because
the
I went
book
through
so people can look for it?
Acupuncture of the Mind.
Acupuncture of the Mind. I like that. That's an interesting title there.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So
Acupuncture of the Mind.
actually, I wrote the book. I went to film school because I wanted to do a TV series and
Mhm.
a film script. But obviously, you've got to pay the bills, so we started filming.
Yeah.
But this book is actually, I wrote it not as a book initially. I wanted to actually do it. Well, I did write it as a book, but I want it to be a TV series.
Oh,
that's why it's a little bit different. Like it's paced a little bit differently to what a novel would be, I guess. And it's very deep and intellectual, so it's probably not for everyone. Yeah.
So I grew up in a church which is commonly referred to as a cult, the Mormon Church.
Okay, I know what that means. Yeah.
I consider it to be a cult. I consider it to be up there with the Scientology cult. And the reason there's a lot of reasons why it's called, I refer to it as a cult, and many people do, is because they have that whole Jonestown sort of thing where they try and get you to cut yourself off from anybody who's an apostate or doesn't believe in it. And even if they're family or friends, you have to let those people go and avoid them. It's a very sad fact, as you probably know, when it comes to cults, they try and rip families apart. So I've always grown up trying to understand why people believe what they believe, whether it's blue Martians from space that are running amok amongst us. If you look at the National Enquirer magazine, they claim, Bill Clinton or whoever's in government is a lizard person. And there's all sorts of things that go on. And I've studied a little bit of near death. I mean, I don't have a full study of it, but it was interesting to me, stories back in the day where people have near death experiences and what they would experience going through them, and then coming back. And it's always been interesting to me. So do you feel that do you feel after going through the experiences you've been through that, do you believe there's a God, or do you believe in religion, or is it more about the universe? Where are you at on the whole spectrum of that?
And that's why I wrote the book, is to separate religion from the concept of God. So
Concept of what?
Of God, like a God.
Okay.
Yeah. So based on my experience, like with the outer body, all I can reveal, I guess, from the experience, referring to the God aspect, is that there was something or someone with me. That wasn't just my conscious. There was something else that was, as the word omnipresent, like that's just there.
Yeah.
So, but that's how I've always felt, because, like I couldn't understand. Like I used to, go and see my friend, like when I was really little, and he said, I couldn't come out to play because he had confession. And I didn't understand what the concept of confession was. Like what? And then he explained it. Like, well, why would you tell this guy about stuff when you can just talk? Like, I just never understood it.
Yeah.
So, but going back to the Mormon thing, it's interesting because, I can relate to that, because it was a Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, that's the same way they all come around and bang on your door.
And I was invited to a wedding last year, to give you some perspective. Actually, it was an engagement party, and when I got there, it was actually a wedding, and that was my daughter's surprise wedding. And let's just say that it ended really badly, and she doesn't talk to me anymore. And because I wanted to do a father of the bride, because I just wanted to have a speech. This was a shock to me that she was even getting married to start with. And so she was like shaking.
So she surprised you by inviting you to an event, and you didn't know that she was getting married at the event.
That's right. 99% of the people there were Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh.
My parents, my brother, and my lovely wife, who I have now, we were invited. We're all non-Jehovah's Witnesses. The only JW in the entire family was my ex-wife, no one else. And that's when she joined, and then my daughter obviously had, she developed anxiety and all the rest of it, and then she got caught up in it as well. So at the event, and I just wanted to do a speech, and the next thing you know, I just see this curtain of black suits. I couldn't touch the ground. I couldn't see anything, and next thing you know, I was out in the car park, and they would not let me do a speech for my daughter.
So they physically removed you from the...
They physically removed me because all I wanted to do, and I was gentle, I was just like, I'd just like to, and then I heard this, no, stop him, and it was just, yeah, and that was it.
So did she become a Jehovah's Witness then? Is that?
She was baptized, I think they call it, like probably about 5 years earlier. Yeah, because she was in school. She had anxiety. I took her to a child psychologist to help her out, and I spoke to the school, and because I had her 50% of the time, so I spoke to a psychologist and tried to keep her in school and followed whatever. And then I was threatened with law because I took her to a psychologist, you know.
Wow.
And then what happened was her mum decided to put her into homeschooling. And of course, that's how she's at home all the time. She didn't want to leave the house because she had anxiety.
Oh.
And I just saw her less and less, and you know, that's what becomes of that. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting. I don't know what I'd do if somebody gave me a surprise wedding. I guess as long as I wasn't getting hitched, but that would be probably hard being a father or parent of a child being invited to something like that, because you're like, what the hell is going on?
And the added cruelty to that was I had so many people coming up to me going, how does that make you feel that you didn't know? Like all the Jehovah's Witnesses coming up to me, like it's like they put you in a cage. Yeah, just to poke sticks at you like this.
Jesus.
And I'm like, so I'm torn between. There's more to that story, which is I don't want to reveal it here, but it is really sinister. But I won't reveal it here because it's really sensitive.
Well, it's always interesting. I've always wondered about the Jehovah's Witnesses. They always come around and they leave their little. They have like a magazine or newspaper. They always leave like. They always leave it on the front door, and I've got a door camera, so I know who's at the front door. I don't get many Jehovah's Witnesses at my new house, but my older house used to get them almost every weekend.
Yeah.
And they'd have some, I forget what the name of their magazine is. The Spirituals. What's that?
Awake.
The Watchtower?
Awake.
Awake?
Like when you're awake.
Maybe that's it. I don't know. But they'll leave it, and I always know that it was them. And so they're pretty funny. They love to go door to door, and I've done some reading about the Seventh-day Adventists because I could never figure them out. I think I got bored one night and did some reading, and they have some funky belief systems going on. I don't know, but I left the Mormon Church. I from my very birth. I mean, I remember as early as 3 years old thinking this is the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard. And I just thought the whole thing was, and just looking at it, I'm like, you know what, this is human nature, and this is some kind of game people are playing. And I just hated it from childhood. And I used to, throughout my whole childhood, I would ditch church, and I would go behind the church. Sometimes I'd take a little girl with me, and we'd be kissing in the back, playing doctor, all that stuff, but in an innocent sort of way. I were like 9 or 10, that sort of thing. And we'd play hooky in the back of the church, me and a friend or a little girl or whatever, and we'd just be hanging out, doing the thing, but I just never got it, and so I would slough church. And I had this trick that I started doing, where what I would do is I would ride my bike to church, and then I wave at my family, hey, yeah, I'm going into 3 hours of church. Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. So then I go in the bathroom and camp out in one of the stalls, and I wait till all the church services started. And the Mormons, they have this 3 hour church that they do, and there's like 2 or 3 blocks of these schools that you go to. And so I'd hang out in the bathroom until all the halls were cleared. And then I'd sneak out, go to my bike, go home and watch TV for 3 hours. And then I would bike back to church
Wow.
and sneak in at the last meeting at the very last row, and for the last 5 minutes, and then my parents would get up and I'd be like, hey, oh, that's so inspiring. I learned so much from that, whatever that was.
You were so committed to not being committed, weren't you?
I did that for most of 16 years. I would just ditch. And then every now and then, like, some Sunday school teacher would get a hold of my parents and be like, we don't ever see Chris in school. Like, where is he? And my parents would be like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm in the back. I don't know what this dude's thing is. And then I have to go, I have to make appearances for a couple weeks in the front row, and then I move to the middle row, and then I move to the back, and then I quit going again. And so I just always thought it was bunk. And the longer I lived in it with religion, the more I had, like, all these questions. Like they would tell me that, like when you come to life, and God sends you, he sends you with free will. And so you have a choice to fuck up your life or not.
Yeah.
But then they'd say, like, and you'd be like, well, so Judas, by, selling out Christ and him putting on the cross was like bad free will on his part. And they're like, no, Judas was sent here to make sure that his job was to betray Christ to get crucified. And you're like, wait. So, or, they tell you that you have free will, but they'd be like, God knows what choices you're going to make. And he knows whether you're going to come out the other side. And you're like, well, that's some fucked up sadism, man. Like, if he knows what I'm going to fucking do, and he knows that I'm going to make choices that are going to make me go to hell, why'd he send me here? What an asshole. And just the shit just would not fucking jive. The more you just rotate it, man. Like, this one doesn't match this one over here.
Yeah, and you're saying, like, from 3 years old,
Yeah, from 3 years old. I mean, from my earliest memory, I was like, this is some bunk shit.
And that's one thing that I've come to realize, like, children are closer to God, in that sense, or God, or whatever you want to call it, but they're closer to truth or whatever, because they've just come out of the womb and they're pure. Like,
you see things pretty plainly as I did. I was born a king. I never like could do the sheep thing where I was like, well, okay, whatever. And there were moments in there where we kind of bought it and played along. But I remember being, and so finally at 16 years old, I was tired of playing the game of hiding and cheating and everything. And so what had happened was I had found a friend who was non-religious, and his parents were really cool. They owned a bar, and I just liked hanging out with my friend at 16. And so finally I'm just like, well, I'd really like to go hang out with him on Sunday and quit playing this fake game. So I went to my parents and I said, hey man, I just don't want to do this anymore. And I just, it's great for you guys. Have fun with that, but I just don't want
to. Did that complicate things? Like, were you allowed to see, like, people?
No, it was pretty awful. Pretty awful. It was pretty painful.
So they have excommunication as well, do they?
I didn't get excommunicated. I left the church. I don't know why they didn't excommunicate me. But what happened to me was very cultish. I went to my parents, and I guess I was a fairly good salesman at a young age, or trying to be, because I'd spent a long time going, how am I going to break this to them? And so I went to them and I explained it like this. I says, when I grew up, I used to be a Boy Scout, and I subscribed to this magazine called Boy's Life for Boy Scouts, right? And there kind of reached a time where I didn't really want to be a Boy Scout anymore, and I didn't really want to subscribe to the magazine. And you guys have this magazine called Mormonism, and I think it's a good magazine. I think it's great for you. But I've decided that I don't want to subscribe to Mormonism magazine anymore. I don't want to, and I'm not saying your thing's bad, and I'm not judging you. It's just, I don't want to subscribe to the magazine anymore. Just don't. I don't want to do it. I want to go play with my friend Randy and hang out. We go to his basement, and we had bass guitars and drums. We had a little band we were trying to do, whatever. And we used to hang out, play records, and play gamble and just talk about stupid shit the kids do at 16. And I'm just like, I want to go play with my friend at 16. And my parents had no idea that I'd been cheating this for all these years. And so what they did was, we had a lot of loggerheads, a lot of fights with my old man, a lot of fights with my mom. And they had the Mormon church. This is funny. The Mormon church hired a psychiatrist to find out why I was, I guess, losing my mind and leaving the church. Wow. Yeah. They hired a psychiatrist who was Mormon. Now this is a church paying for a Mormon psychiatrist to try and figure out why I'm fucked up in the head because I want to leave the church. Yeah. And so
did they find out?
And so I went to the psychiatrist like about 4 visits, and they were fairly normal. For the most part, I was just that teenager who clams up when you start pushing his buttons, right? I'd just be like, talking to you. And but I didn't have any real problems with the psychiatrist. He was just trying, talking to me, and then finally, I guess the Mormon church was like, "Hey, man, you got to wrap this shit because this costs money." And so we had this session between my parents and me and the psychiatrist. And so we're sitting there, and the psychiatrist starts just going in at me with everything he's gotten for 4 visits. And he starts telling me that I'm doing this for attention. And he starts like yelling at me. And so I close him off in that, teenage sort of thing where I fold my arms and I'm just kind of like, I'm not even going to engage you. And so then he starts yelling and screaming at me, and he's in my face with his finger. This is the psychiatrist.
Wow.
And psychiatrists aren't supposed to be the ones who lose the shit in the session. So he's just losing it on me, and he's telling me that I'm doing this for attention, which I'm not. I just really don't want to play anymore. I don't want to play the game. I want to go play with my friend. It's as simple as that. When you're a teenager, your friends are like so important to you. It's like, I just want to go play with my friend. That's it on Sunday. I don't want to have to deal with the shit on Sunday where I got to do the bike thing. And I'm just tired of living a lie, really.
Yeah.
So finally I stand up and I walk out. I'm like, just fuck you people. So I walk out, and what it did do is it helped my parents see how crazy the whole thing was. It kind of gave them an outside picture of what they were doing to me and all the yelling and screaming we were going through. And I think they had some introspection at that point and realized that how weird this whole thing was getting. And he called the next day and apologized and offered to have more sessions. And my parents just kind of went, no, I think we're kind of closed that door. But after that, I left the church. I never really was in it as far as I was ever concerned.
Yeah.
But I left the church and said bye-bye. But my issues always had to been that I've always had to deal with those people. I lived in that state for a lot of years. And so I still had to deal with that cult and its overbearing governance, both in the government of the state of Utah, and also whatever. So, constantly I've kind of dealt with belief systems since then as to why do people believe what they do? Why do they gravitate to one thing or another? And then how do they build these reinforcements where you can have something that starts as a simple belief. Well, I believe in God. And then it becomes something sometimes really far out of control where, you either join Scientology or the Seventh-day Adventists, or part of my wonderment has been, or my consideration has been like, there's so many different things you can fucking believe in. They all can't be right. There's been, I think they say there's been 3,000 gods that have been created and claimed by man over history. You're like, you know, and really when it comes down to when you die, I think it was Neil Peart who wrote this from Rush. He goes, one of the problems about dying and choosing your religion or dogma or whatever it is you want to choose to believe, whether you believe anything at all, is nobody really knows what goes on after death. And I think after you pass through the light, because that seems to be most everyone's after death experience. They're kind of there and they feel or see things that they're familiar with, but no one ever goes to the light, because I guess once you go to the light, you don't come back. At least that seems to be the common element. But you know, he wrote that it's like the Groucho Marx game show, where you had to pick what the word was in Groucho Marx's head, and if you didn't get it right, you lost. So you had to pick that right word. So you could basically live your whole life as a good Mormon or good Seventh-day Adventist or good Catholic, and if you didn't pick the right religion out of 3,000 gods, well, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
You know, there's South Park did a great movie on it years ago where everyone dies and they're standing there in hell, and the guy comes out and he goes, "All right, so everyone who didn't pick Mormonism, everybody goes to hell. Sorry, the correct word was Mormonism." And you're like, who created this fucked up, masochist, sadistic game show where somehow you got to gamble your life at picking the right deity and the right religion, and hopefully you don't go to hell, because if you didn't, you will, evidently, according to some people.
Yeah, and one of the things that they throw back at you too is, what if you're wrong? Like,
exactly.
Well,
what if you go Catholic and the real word, the real secret word from Groucho Marx was Scientology? Like, shit, I should have went with the Tom Cruise thing, even though he's gay. I don't know. That's true. Allegedly. I don't know. Whatever. So what's your thoughts on that whole thing?
Sorry?
I mean, do you aspire to one thing, or do you feel like we're in a universe of beings and things, or where do you feel you're on the spectrum of all that?
I'm very careful. It's basically what you've just said. Like, no one knows shit, right? And what I'm careful with, and the reason that it's taken me quite a long time probably to get this book out as well, is because, like, you know, you read something and someone goes, "Oh, this is the meaning. This is what it means." Everything is subjective. Everything, you know, it depends on what you think it means. It doesn't. It's not a reflection of what other people thinks it means. So with me, it's like, I don't know the answers. All I can tell you is what I've experienced. But on top of that, I think the ego is such a huge thing. You know, I don't subscribe to one of my I don't like New Age stuff. You know, like people say, "Oh, if you do this," and you know, somehow if they put a coloured picture with all these, I don't know, stones or whatever around some chakra or whatever, it's going to heal something. Like, no, you heal yourself. That's it.
Yeah.
If you don't take the action, then nothing's going to happen. It's that simple.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah. And so with what I believe as well, like, the interesting thing is when I was 15, I had this, had a girlfriend, and I went to watch her play indoor cricket. And I had a friend with me, and I went outside with him, and suddenly we were surrounded, my friend and I, with all these people. They just came from, I don't know where, like, they just came from somewhere, and they surrounded us. And then one person came into the ring, and I was actually king hit. I got knocked out. And I had been out for, I don't know how long, but I was carried to my girlfriend's place at the time, up a set of stairs. It was 2 blocks away, and that's when I came to. Mm-hmm. But in that whole experience, I didn't have a memory of anything. So it's like I can't say I had a near-death experience, but I didn't have a memory of anything in, you know, the 20 minutes or whatever it was that I was out. So, you know, some people see one thing and some people see another. I read an interesting article the other day if you believe in a, I don't know, a vengeful God, then when you have a near-death experience, you might see, I don't know, fire and hell and whatever. But if you're not that way, then you carry that with you. I'm kind of
I've read the same thing, that when people die, whatever their religion is or their belief system is, you know, like for Mormons, they see Joseph Smith. For the Catholics, they meet one of the popes. Yeah. There's a real kind of bias to what they see in that near-death space. And of course, no one ever is like Carrie Ann in Poltergeist. They never go into the light. Carrie Ann, don't go into the light. So, you know, it's an interesting thing. You know, I'm very comfortable in my choice that I don't know what happens after you die. Was it Jimi Hendrix or the Doors, Jim Morrison, who said no one gets out of here alive? And I think from all the after death experiences that I've read about and heard about, you know, I still think for the most part, a lot of us don't know what goes on after we die, or where we actually go, or what we become, or if we become anything at all. One of the things the Mormons used to say to me was, they'd be like, well, what if you die and it's just, and you end and it's just black empty space and you're just gone? And you're like, well, I won't know I'm gone because I'll be gone, right? Like, I'm not going to be floating through like space going, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
I'll just be gone.
I won't
have a consciousness to be like, I think I'm gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's on Friday nights, usually, with drinking. I think I'm gone. But, you know, to me, I'm very comfortable with that. I'm very comfortable with the fact that if I die, it's going to be whatever it is. I see too many of man's human nature fingerprints in religion.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for the fact that religion is quite the little profitable business, I mean, for me to go to you and say, I'll sell you a piece of real estate that's up in the sky that you can't see now, but you'll see it after you die, because it's really hard to get a refund if you find out that real estate is a bunch of bullshit after you die. You can't come back most times.
That's it.
And get your money back. And I'll just keep that for you. It's quite the hell of a business, really, when you think about it. I mean, you're selling this afterlife real estate. It's really beautiful. Trust me, it's gonna be fine. It always reminds me of that scene in the movie Grifters, where the guy's like, oh yeah, I'm looking in, look at all these servers. Oh, they're just amazing. The guy's like, really? Wow. But always, what has always perplexed me is what draws people to the different things. Like, why does one person go to this, and why does one person go to that, and where does the beginning of that choice happen? Like, where is the beginning of that where's that first step that makes you go, that gets you led down a path where you join a cult, or where you join a religion, or whether you just believe the world is inhabited by lizard people or little blue Martians that are posing as human beings. You know, some people say they can see little blue Martians wandering around us, but I believe that's I believe that might be a psychosis where they're off their lithium. I don't know. I mean, there's jokes about how, what if the whole time the homeless guy was walking around saying that he was a prophet really was a prophet, and we all should have listened to him.
You just never know, do you?
Yeah, but the concept of hell and the concept of how we're preordained to our destination by some sadistic, manipulative, shallow-eagled Trump-like person. Trump's probably the closest person. If there is a God, I mean, you read the Old Testament, Trump probably is like the godlike personality of the person in the Old Testament. But you read some of it and you're just like, for a guy who's an infinite being, he's all seeing and all knowing, he sure is fucking petty. You know what I mean?
That's exactly right.
You're just like,
how it comes across, isn't it? Like,
yeah, and for me, if you look at how the world and the molecular structure and the scientific natures of the build of just anything in our world down to an atom, and then you look at its spread and its breadth through the universe, and there is a mathematics to it on everything and how it operates and works, and you look at that and you think, I'm not, of course, brilliant, but you look at the concept of what a brain must have been to come up with that, assuming that there's a brain made in our own image, because sadly, one of the things we do is we project ourselves on it. I don't know if snakes run around going like, I wonder if I have a snake god who looks like me. It's very subjective that we have a god who looks like us, and that someday we'll all be gods as well. It's a real whole sort of hand jerk off thing that goes on there. For all we know, it's some alien who's like, let's see what we can make now. And then I had other Mormons that would tell me, well, we're a special experiment that God made. And I'm like, so we're like an ant fucking farm that he made, and he's moved on now to other ant farms. And this whole petty thing that people would have to me, like, God's listening if he hears you swear. And you're like, if you really look at this whole universe, is God that petty where you're sitting around going, I wonder which 4 letters of the alphabet that Chris Voss put together today and swore, and he check mark, he's going to hell. You really look at when you really look at the whole universe in those pictures from NASA and stuff, and you're like, whoever created this isn't stupid petty, isn't stupid anal, where they just be like, I better find out what Chris Voss is doing today, and Chris Voss say his prayer. And I sincerely believe that if there ever was such a creator or person, if they ever came back to their little ant farm that they left behind here on Earth of us, they would probably look at what we're doing and the shit that we're selling as to who they are and religion, and they'd be like, you know what? We're going to wipe them off the Earth, and probably just be another flood. So there you go.
And you couldn't blame them.
I couldn't blame him. I would be like, you know what, you really should. I still look at human beings and I go, I've had people say to me, someday we should have peace on Earth. I'm like, you know what you need to do if you want peace on Earth? Eliminate all the humans. Then you'll have peace on Earth. We're actually the fucking problem. Human nature is the problem. We are the scourge, locust problem in and of ourselves.
Yeah. Actually, you're talking about NASA, not NASA. I'd like to talk about one more thing, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So you're talking about belief systems. It's not in the book, but I'll just give you something that after I got struck by lightning and all that sort of stuff, I separated from my wife. But I've always noticed this Baptist church in my area. I like architecture. I'm an building architecture person. And I don't go to church. I don't feel comfortable going to church. But for whatever reason, I went to this church and I sat at the back because I just wanted to, Anyway, and of course I'm a new face there, and then everyone left. And the guy that was talking, I don't know what you call him, pastor, priest, whatever they are, but he had an accent, because I'm in Australia, but he was an American. And I couldn't really understand too much of what he was saying because it was very echoey in the church. But I was just there, I was a bit lost, whatever it was. Anyway, and I left. I was the last one to leave. And he pulled me aside. And then I started talking to him about the JW thing. Yeah, it's best to separate. I'm not into church, religion, not into all that. And he took me downstairs in this tiny little room, and he just showed me all this anti-Jehovah's Witness paraphernalia, that they kept down there. Anyway, and then I started, obviously I gained his trust, a little bit. And then I started my questions, and I asked him, why did you become what you became? And this is true. He said to me that when he was growing up, he had a fixation, when he believed, he just wanted to see aliens, he wanted to see UFOs, he was into all that sort of stuff as he was growing up. And he bought all the magazines, you name it, and he could not prove after all that, the existence of them. So he became a scientist at NASA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that was actually because he was so fascinated with the universe and everything else, space travel, whatever it was. And then one day he said, no, I can't prove any of this. And he turned to God. And then this church came up, and now he's leading that church. Like, he went through I don't know what they go through, the ministry or whatever they do. And that's how he ended up, because he couldn't prove the existence of aliens. So he turned to God because he believes in God now, or religion, or whatever it is. And that somehow cemented something in him. It's just funny how things work out.
The only thing I can think of as to why people, I believe everyone searches for meaning. We seem to be damned with this consciousness that other animals don't seem to have, maybe quite as much as we do. Although I'm pretty suspicious of my dog's consciousness. We seem to have a lot more consciousness maybe than other beings. I don't know if that's really true, but we seem to, and so we have the ability to sit around and play with our navels and go, why are we here? And I think I think of the caveman who for the first time in life, came into the world, and you're living in the cave, and everything in the world can eat you, kill you. You're listening to the thunder crack at night. You're listening to, you're seeing the whole world around you, and it's scary as hell because you don't understand it. No one's comes to sit down with you and goes, well, it's just thunder. That's all it is. It's a chemical reaction of, scientific, whatever, blah, 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 on the rain. And, and for all you're just like, oh, it's some being that just has control over me. And I think what people do in this search for meaning as they're growing up is they're trying to figure out what goes on after you die and why are we here. And they really get, and I think a lot of it comes from ego fear, where people are really afraid to die, and they're really afraid to, what happens thereafter. And their ego fear just drives them into maybe believing into this, that, or the other. I remember reading a long time ago somebody who said, I don't know what happens after you die, but what I do, and I don't know why we're here, I don't know why we're born here, but I do know one thing. There's a point where we're born, and there's a point where we die. And probably the best thing to do is to make the most of what we can between these 2 points, because nobody knows what goes on after. Because, Van Halen wrote a line to something along those effects too, as well, where, some people sit around and they just scrape life away and don't experience it because they're like, well, I can't do certain things because the God might be angry at me and I might go to hell. And they suck the life out of life, and therefore they don't live it. And then they're in this fear constantly because they're like, well, did I do the right thing? Where if you just enjoy what's here, and I think if there was a God who gave us this life and all the beauty that surrounds us in our perception, he would want us to appreciate it. He'd be like, go make the most of that party. Have fun with that. Let me know how that goes, but I made something really cool for you, and I want you to go enjoy it. And I just can't buy the sadism, the puppet master of evil, let's fuck with these people today. I went through points of Mormonism or religion where I actually believed that, there was a puppet master fucking with me, and he was ruining my life that day or whatever. And there were some times where I would beg, I'm like, please, God, just fucking stop. Yeah. And now when you look at the whole of it, when you look at human nature, when you look at man's fallacies, and some of the things that bind him to driving and abuse and manipulation for money, If you came to me with your religion, you're like, hey, you know what, Chris, you don't have to give me any money. Just believe in my stuff. And you don't have to give me any power. And I don't have to manipulate you in any way, shape, or form. But here's what I believe. And you have a nice day. I'll see you around. That might be a little bit more easier to thing. But this whole thing where I can buy invisible vaporware real estate in the afterlife, but I have to give you hard currency cash that's very tangible. That's seems really human nature based to me.
Yeah, and even the gods that you buy at the marketplace, like which god should I pray to today? Like seriously.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Neil Peart really wrote it really well. It was the Groucho Marx. It was the Groucho Marx game show, and I forget what it was called, but I think it was guess the name of that or name that, and you had to figure out the word that was in Groucho Marx's head. And so it was like a crapshoot. You just like, you could live your whole life being a good Christian and find out that Catholicism was the fucking correct word. And you guess wrong. So you're going to hell. I mean, can you imagine the terror of that sort of thought where if I don't pick the right one, then I'm going to burn in hellfire for all of fucking eternity. It's comical when you really think about it. And somehow this is the God who loves you. I love you, so I'm gonna fuck your life and put you in hell. Yeah. What the hell's going on, man?
And we're on the other side of 2000, and people still believe this stuff. You know, like,
they do.
Yeah. But do you think it's an insecurity in a lot of people?
I think it's insecurity about death and the fear of death. And the fear of their mortality. There was a book I read years ago when I was a child in psychology class. I think it was called The Fear of Death. It was kind of an interesting book, but it dealt with people's fear of the death and the unknown. And like I say, I used to get all these mad comments from people in religion. They'd be like, you know, what if you die and it's a big black void? And you're like, I can't change that. I mean, if that's what it is, it's not like I can go, well, I'm not going to die. We're not doing that program. That sounds awful. I'm not going there. You just don't have a choice. Nobody gets out of here alive. I think it was Jim Morrison who said that. You know, you really don't have a choice. You're going to die someday. That's you know, someday the roller coaster comes to a ride and an end, and that's it. And whatever's past door number 2 is on, you know, it could be a tiger or a princess. You don't have a choice, but you're going to find out.
Yeah, it's like with the Jehovah's Witnesses, like the 1914 generation will never die, they once taught. So they're holding on to the belief that they will never die.
Oh, wow.
You know, for 1,000 years. But then, of course, that never happened because they all died from the 1914 generation. But, yeah, it's true. Like, they hold on to that. There is that fear of death, isn't it?
I think there's a fear of death, and I see it in religious people where they're really afraid of death. And sometimes they've held back so much in their lives, and they've squandered some of the real beauty. Like some of my Mormon friends, I'll be like, hey man, did you see that Oscar-winning picture? It was really beautiful art, just incredible human experience, incredible message. And they're like, oh, that's rated R. We can't go see that. And I'm like, but it's not like a porn flick. It was a beautiful Oscar-winning, Academy Award-winning, just a beautiful, mind-opening sort of experience. It wasn't like you went there to see boobs. And they're like, no, we can't go see R-rated movies. And you're like, and you sit and you look at that art that you saw, and you go, wow, man, you have no idea what such beautiful things that you're missing in the world. You know, I was raised Mormon and religious, and to me, sex was evil, sex was bad. You know, it's just for procreation. Nudity is bad. Women naked is bad. And fortunately, there was a artist, a sculptor who lived in my neighborhood, And so I used to go hang out with him, and he had this giant yard, and it was really cool, all the different stuff that he had in his yard, and he was always working on cars. But one of the things he did was he was an artist who did sculpting, and he would paint and do sculpting. And he would have women come nude, and they would sit, and there was nothing pornographic or nothing weird about it. It was, you know, just like old artists of the time that built, you know, David and stuff. And he would sculpt them, and I would never be present when the girls were around, but I would be present when I would see the final products, because this whole art studio was filled with these beautiful sculptures he'd made, and they were incredibly gorgeous. And back then I didn't even hit puberty, so I didn't, you know, I was connecting those dots in any way, shape, or form. And so he taught me. He says, you know, there's nothing wrong with this. He goes, look how beautiful the art form of a woman is, the body of a woman. Look how beautiful it is. And there was nothing perverted about it in any way, shape, or form. It probably helped that I wasn't attending at puberty, because I probably would have responded to it differently. But you know, that's when I kind of got an appreciation where I'm like, you know, some of this bullshit I'm being fed about how this is evil and that's evil, and you know, everything else. So there's that.
Are you compelled to kind of help people that think like that, or is it just an experience for you?
Well, yeah, I am compelled to help people because, you know, I constantly, most of my family is still Mormon. And so, you know, it's always been a tug of war all of our lives, where I've always tried to, my attitude towards them has been like, if you want to, whatever you guys want to believe in, have fun with that. Just keep it off me and keep it away from me. Don't try and get the shit on me. Just keep it over there. But for a lot of years, they would push it, you know, and it would sneak into the conversations and sneak into the thing. And then there have been times where I've tried to, you know, convince them to change their minds. And so one of the things I have always struggled with and studied with is, why do people believe what they believe, and why, once they get so deep in the shit of what they believe, whatever it is, that they can't see their way out, that they can't get outside that box, that they're trapped in it, stuck in it. And for me, I went through that catharsis when I did leave Mormonism. I still had a lot of that trash in my head about, you know, this is evil and that's bad. And so me trying to rejoin the real world was really hard, because some things I would see and I was still hung up with some of the belief systems about that's evil or that's bad, and just trying to unpeel the onion that had been built up over the religious years of these scotomas of false beliefs, and then trying to re-engage the real world that I'd always been taught was evil, and you know, everyone's satanic, Gentile, whatever, you know, all that stuff. And so it was really hard to crawl back into the real world and then, you know, get reacquainted to everything. It took me years to clean out all the stuff from my head. I probably still am tainted by it.
I'd say it would be, like anyone would be.
Yeah. I think there's some aspects of it that don't. Some of that puritanical stuff is still in there. And yeah, I think I suppose you're always messed up whenever you're taught as a child.
Oh, right. Shit.
What are you gonna say?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting journey, but I never had a near-death experience. I've had a few hangovers that feel like a near-death experience, but I've never quite been as far as you have.
It's funny. My dad had one as well when he was on an operating table many years ago.
Wow.
But his was different. He had the typical, he saw people on the side or whatever, you know, there's a light, all that sort of stuff.
Did he meet like prior family members that had passed on?
He recognized some that had passed. He didn't recognize some when there was a light. But the interesting thing with him is he doesn't like to talk about it. He's uncomfortable. He won't tell me detail. Like, he's very different in that way. Like, but maybe it's because, I don't know, maybe he's tainted with some sort of religious aspect. He's not religious, but, you know, like, he's probably just still stuck in that primitive thought somewhere. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he's very uncomfortable if you ever talk about death or his experience or
He
whatever.
still has a fear of it.
Yeah, even though he's experienced a beautiful thing, it wasn't a bad thing, from what I understood.
Yeah. But I guess perception is relative. You know, for me, what's interesting for me is I'm very comfortable in not knowing what goes on after life because I can't change it. I can't.
That's it.
You know, it's not like I can take a different fork in the road. Like, well, I'm just not going to die. Screw that deal. I'm just going to avoid it. There's no choice. So I might as well enjoy what space I'm given. I might as well enjoy the beauty. I might as well not worry about what it's going to be because it's going to be what it's going to be, whether I worry about it or not, whether I fret, like, do I say my prayers today or do I go to the strip club today? What's going to get me to hell? What's going to get me to heaven and an eternity? And
it's a real discipline.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Sorry, it's a real discipline to think like that too, like to not worry about it. You've got to train yourself to not worry about it. Yeah,
and I've come to the conclusion that I came to the conclusion that I don't know and no one knows, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay that I don't know. It for some reason it was very zen for me, without me really making it zen. It was just kind of like I don't know, and I'm going to be okay with not knowing because I don't have a choice. So we're just going to ride this, and it's just like a roller coaster that you're riding for the first time. You don't know where it's going to end or how it's going to end. It's going to end. You're going to get off someday, but until then, enjoy the ride. Yeah. And I have had struggles though. The recently, when my first dog died a couple years ago, my ego brain really wanted to believe. I had all these people that came to me and they go, "Oh, your dog's gone to the Rainbow Bridge." And I'm like, "What the hell's the Rainbow Bridge?" And they go, "Oh, well, when dogs die," and this, I guess part of this comes from some bullshit from Catholicism where they said that animals don't get into heaven back in the day. I guess they obviously changed that. But they used to have a thing where animals didn't get into heaven, which is about the coldest ass shit you can come up with. And so somebody came with this concept of the Rainbow Bridge where the pets that you love, they don't go to heaven. They go to like this special Rainbow Bridge place. They cross into the Rainbow Bridge and they go there and they wait for you. And then when you die, you go there and then you take them to heaven, you know, or whatever. I don't know.
How did I think of these things?
It's, you know, this is the problem I've always had. The more I got to know humans and human nature and their ability to lie, cheat, steal, and whatever, especially for money. And then you come upon religion and you see that there's a money factor in it as well. You start to go, wow, this sure is convenient for everyone, isn't it? And you start to see the prefabrication, the grand designs that go into what people are doing with it. And then you see so many variances of it. But I do have to tell you though, I've always been fine with it. But when my dog died, after I think 15 or 16 years, she was with me, and I don't have a wife or kids. So my two dogs have always been like my children. And so those have been my kids as far as I'm concerned. And so when she died, it was really hard. And I really felt my ego saying, I really want to believe that there's an afterlife, that she's there, and then I'm going to see her again someday. And I could feel part of my brain, my ego part probably going, I really want to believe this. This feels really good if I can just believe. And there were some times where I would kind of fall into the feeling of it, where I'd be like, it's almost like if I could just feel that and believe in that, that would just be fine. And I'd be like, no, Chris. Okay, once you step down this road, once we start walking down this road, it's a bad fucking road because God knows where this thing leads. And once I start lying and deluding myself that there's a certain whatever, then it's hard to do. And so finally, the resolution that I came up with was, part part of it had to really do with loss and the pain of loss and the pain of something being taken away from me. And that really was the struggle for me, was that I lost something that I believe was mine at the time, and that had been taken away from me, and that it had gone somewhere. And somebody said to me one day, they said, you know, no one knows where your dog went, but they're still in your memory, they're still in your being, they're still in your heart because you love them. And so I became really comfortable with believing that in some way or form, their spirit I keep alive. Now, I don't know if it's really their spirit, let's put it that way, so I'm not being religious, but the essence of them, or the spirit of them, or the memory of them in a living sort of witness lies inside me. And so maybe they don't exist in another plane somewhere. Maybe they did hit the black wall and they don't exist anymore. But as long as I'm alive, they kind of, and that did give me some peace. And I said, I think this is kind of maybe a bit of a false thing that I can believe in. And I don't believe that there's some spirit that I sucked into them and their spirits in my body or any of that sort of BS. It's just the memory of their spirit, and yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then when
absolutely.
my second dog died, it became really fucking hard not to buy into that rainbow bridge crap and religion and stuff. I really struggled with it, with my ego. And now that I've studied Zen, I realize what my ego has been up to in trying to get me to believe some of this stuff, to resolve those issues. And now that I've gotten into Zen and thinking, I've understood why it is I'm trying to possess those things and make them mine, when really it's just the universe going through its process, and I don't own those things.
That's a good perspective. I like that, actually. Yeah, I struggle with my dog.
I don't know if you've ever read Eckhart Tolle. Yeah, I was having a real hard time a couple months ago because I've been having a real hard time with our politics and the issues of some of our crazy leaders that we've elected over here. And on top of that, I was having issues with my dog passing. She passed about 4 months ago, and so my world's been pretty strained. And I reached a point just before I had someone on the podcast to talk to me about Zen, where I lost one of the hard drives that had a few hundred photos of my dog that recently passed. And I started getting really suicidal, because you took my dog and now you took the pictures of the memory I had. What kind of fucked up fucking shit is this? You know, I don't believe there's a God that's manipulating this. It's just some sort of weird karmic bullshit fate. And so my friend introduced me to Zen and Eckhart Tolle and a bunch of other books. And so I've been studying it now, and I realize why we strive to possess these things, and why we think that there are some, and why when tragedies happen, we're so taken by the tragedies, and then we fabricate this bullshit to justify them, when really that's just the chaos of the world passing through, and we need to accept it and go, that's the chaos of the world and the universe. So that's really helped me over the past, actually, this has been a journey over the past month that I've been going through this. And I've been able to step away from politics and step away from the emotional connection to that, and just go, those people are going to do what they're going to do. And what I need to focus on is what I'm doing every day and what this moment is.
Yeah.
And that's been incredibly helpful. And really the Zen of that is appreciating what we have right here and what we have now, and what you and I are talking about, that we don't know what's going to go on after that. So we might as well take care of what's here.
So you're in the belief that time is only here, not anywhere else? Like there's no such kind of thing?
I don't know if I've gotten that far into the Zen thing. That might be deeper in some of the Zen stuff. I'm still kind of at that beginner stage. But I'm kind of accepting that you know, I'm a real small pea in the world of everything that's happening, and I can't let all that stuff freak me out, because you know, our journey is going to be there, and I have to focus on being present today. I went through and then also recognizing the ego and its ability, I've really gotten tapped into my ego and getting present in the now and sitting and listening to the shit that it starts pulling. And I never realized how much fear-based crap I had going on in my ego, or I guess a lot of us do in our egos. And that's one of the ways it culls and controls us. And sitting and listening to some of my self-talk from my ego has just been enlightening. I never thought I lived on much fear, but I live on a goddamn lot of fear. I mean, it's always working on some fear-based stuff. Now, I've separated myself from religion, but I can see how this thing can get a hold of religion. It can just run amok.
Well, it's all around, isn't it? All the fear-based. I mean, you just pick up.
Yeah. Well, the ego, that ego, when you start studying how this ego in Zen, one of the ways it controls you and runs your mind. A couple of years ago, I was having problems when my dogs were getting old and they were getting sick. Recently, my dog was dying of cancer. And I was having a problem with being present with them because they would come and they would be there and I wouldn't be present. I'd be thinking, I'd be petting them and I'd be thinking about, I don't know, social media and Facebook posts, what Donald Trump's doing today. And I wouldn't be present and they'd be looking at me and I'd just be like glossed over, or I'd be petting them, looking at my phone. And I used to kick myself over the past 14 months when my dog was dying of cancer in hospice care. And I'd be angrily writing political posts on Facebook. And then at night I'd go to bed and I'd be like, I spent hours arguing about politics, and my dog that is on a finite timeline that's about to end, I didn't spend any time with. What kind of fucking idiot am I? And then the next day I'd go do the same thing like a machine.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, the sands of time are ending for this being that I love, and I'm not present. And so I was really struggling with this concept of being present and actually engaging in an intimate, what's the word I'm looking for? Quality, connection with the being, looking her in the eyes and seeing her and not thinking about anything else but her. And so this Zen thing has kind of opened it up and helped me listen to that psychotic idiot ego mind and get present in the now and start quieting everything.
Yeah, I've got a bookshelf here full of that sort of stuff. I don't read any of it because my wife's into all that. But yeah, I try to read, I don't know, Tolley or whoever, and I just can't get in. Like, to me, it's like, no, but I've got to work it out myself. Like, I've had some questions about it because I said to my friends, I'm like, well, this seems like a really great thing, but this almost seems like another escape route. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it almost seems like it's another convenient excuse. Yeah.
But
and it can deviate yourself from.
But so I'm not sure how far I'm going to go into believing the whole Zen and if I'm going to get totally deep, but I do like the presence of now, and I do like the presence of listening to my ego, my fear-based ego, and what he's trying to shovel at me.
Yeah.
Because he shovels a lot of fear at me. If he's not working me about what's the future, if he's not working me about how much money I got and what bills I got to pay, and you're fucking up this, you're fucking up this, Chris, and you're doing this wrong, Chris, and kicking me all day long.
Yeah.
A lot of politics got into that ego. So, I'd spend my day waking up going, what is Donald Trump doing to me today? And
if that's something I can take away from the alien thing, I look at like what I kind of feel from whatever I've experienced is that they don't understand ego. They just don't get it. They just think it's like the most useless currency in the that's ever exists. Like, what is the point of this? Like, there is no point to this. Like, it really hasn't any value at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so now I can look at stuff and appreciate stuff. I pulled away from politics, and I feel more in control of my life and my being, where I don't have this robot freaking jacking me up all the time. And, I still experience states where I go into my own thing and I'm stuck in some sort of pattern. But now I ask myself, am I present? Am I here? Am I in the now? Or I'll tell my ego, back it up off. I'm tired of your shit. You're feeding me. You just go away. And so it's brought me a lot more stillness and calmness. I don't see myself getting chakra stones and believing in crystals and all that kind of stuff, because I think that's where you really start projecting into the religion area again. Whether you believe in a God or whether you're praying to a fucking rock. If you believe in that, hey, have fun, run with that shit. It's whatever, man. But I like the stillness of my mind now. I like me focusing on the present. I go spend time with my dog now. My dog comes to me and I can go, whatever I'm doing isn't as important as this being right before me in this moment. And this moment's the most important thing to me in the world. And so we go play ball and we go do stuff. And when we do stuff, I put my phone down and I try not to think about anything else. And I just try and engage with her and be present.
Yeah.
So it seems to be working for me so far. Check with me next week.
No. Well, you seem to know what you're doing. So
I don't know what I'm doing. That's the problem. I gotta tell you, Goran, I woke up. I'm 50 years old next month, and with this thing, I'm like, what's that?
Sorry, how old are you?
50 years old next month.
Yeah, I'm very, very close behind you. Don't worry, we're all there.
Yeah, and I really feel like I haven't known shit what's going on all my life, especially with this Zen stuff. It's like you just wake up and you're like, holy shit, I've just been. Like I really feel now at 50 years old that I probably should have been seeing a psychiatrist every day for the last 50 years.
I don't know. I think they're more messed up than we are.
That's usually true. Yeah. If you ever dated a girl who was going to psychology school. Yeah.
Oh, you did?
I've dated a lot of girls that have gone to psychology school. I think they're attracted to me because I'm broken. But yeah, you find out why they're going to psychology schools, because they got a lot of freaking problems.
Yeah, well, maybe they're the ones that are, broken.
Yeah, most psychologists. I think psychologists have the highest suicide rate, and you're like, what? I thought you guys were supposed to have your shit together.
Yeah, unfortunately, that could be true, because when I went to film school, when I got my bachelor's degree in film, the psychologist at the uni actually committed suicide while I was there. So there's probably a lot of truth in that, unfortunately.
I think it's then.
But yeah, your Zen books and all that.
One psychologist, number 2.
Wow. Yeah. But with all your Zen books and all that, that's great. Like, my wife reads them, and I actually get something from them. Like, she relays things to me. I'm like, oh yeah, like light bulb moments, and that's a good thing too. But I'm very careful, because I guess because I've got this thing against religion or whatever, and I kind of like, it's the same but different.
See, I feel the same way. I've been so studying the Zen and stuff, and I've liked the basic concepts, but like you say, there's the weird stuff where people start believing in crystals and shit, and I don't want to start believing in some fat Buddha, and I don't want to become a monk where I'm sitting around going all day and living in, like, I don't know, some peak of a mountain and shitting on a rug where I'm taking peyote, whatever. I don't want to make it that hard, man. I just want to keep it simple. Yeah. So
well, you're a good observer of life by the looks of it. So that's the biggest thing, I think. Just observe, and that to me is what it's about. Observe. Yeah, totally observe. Well, it was wonderful to have you on, Goran, and give us your plugs again so that we can have people look you up on the internet. Sure thing, and I'll hopefully be in more communication with you through the emails and whatnot too. Great. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Goran. It was wonderful to have you on. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, be sure to give us a like, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that bell notification. You guys are a wonderful audience for always tuning in as well. Go to iTunes, Google Play to see the podcast and subscribe. Be sure to tell your friends, neighbors, relatives, all that good stuff to subscribe to the show. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.